Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Amy.
Our project is called Mind, Body, and Soul, the Nature of Well-Being, and this podcast is just one small piece of the overall project. We are making a documentary that follows our hike on the Continental Divide Trail that will explore how spending time in nature affects a person's mental, physical, and spiritual well-being.
We are guinea pigs in a sense because we will be documenting our own experiences and recording changes that we find. Along the way, we are interviewing people about their experiences in nature to see how they have been affected.
Much of the benefits that come from being in nature are subjective, and therefore hard to measure in a quantifiable way. That's why we have turned to recording stories as a way to distribute this knowledge. Since the beginning of human culture, we have compressed valuable information into stories, and that's how we have shared wisdom throughout the generations.
We hope that the stories we gathered during this project will help spread some of the wisdom that can be found in the wilderness. Episode 10, Part 1 of 2. An interview with M.J. Eberhart about his reflections found from walking across America multiple times. M.J. Eberhart has many names. His friends call him Sonny, but most know him by his trail name, Nimblewell Nomad. He lived a fairly regular life until he retired, then discovered backpacking as a way to reflect on life and get closer to God. Not only has he hiked all 11 of the National Scenic Trails, including setting the record as the oldest person to hike the Appalachian Trail, he has also road walked across the country multiple times. No one really knows how many miles Nimblewill has hiked. He finds that metric unimportant. He measures the value of his journeys in friendships and wrote a couple books about those experiences.
My name is Sonny. That's my nickname. Was given to me by my mother, Sonny Eberhart. My trail name is Nimblewell Nomad. Go by Nimblewill generally. We're at a place called Flagg Mountain, Alabama, which is kind of centrally located in Alabama between Montgomery and Birmingham. It's a very significant place to be, and I'm so blessed to be here. This is the mountain, that's the beginning. This is where it all starts. This is the beginning of the Appalachian Mountain Range. And this is the beginning of a really wonderful trail that people are finding out about and hearing a little more about and are coming to enjoy, and that's the Pinhoti National Recreation Trail. Starts here on Flagg Mountain. So I'm the caretaker here, been here about 3 years.
How did you end up here?
I hiked through here on my southbound hike. When I did my northbound hike in '98 from Key West to Cap-Gaspé, the southern extent of the Pinhoti Trail at that time was a place called Porter Gap, which is way north of here. So I got to Porter Gap by hiking east of here through Alexander City and Goodwater. So I hadn't even heard about Flagg Mountain, but later I was told that I should have come over and hiked through here and should have hiked Flagg Mountain. So when I did my southbound in 2001, I made a point of coming here from Porter Gap and not going east of here to connect to the Florida Trail. I hiked down through here and I climbed Flagg Mountain on December the 14th, the year 2000. A road walk, because there was no trail through here at the time, as we know it to exist today. And so I climbed the road and spent some time up there on Flagg Mountain, and I just was totally taken in and enamored by the place. It's just such an amazingly different and special place. This mountain has some form of energy that our senses can't really track or identify with, but within our heart and our minds, we know that energy is there because we can not physically feel it now, but you understand what I'm saying? This mountain exuded that energy, and I was just captivated by it. And the other aspect of that was I was completing my hike of the Appalachian Mountain Range, which I knew at that time now that when I climbed Flagg Mountain, I would be on the southernmost mountain in the Appalachian Mountain Range. So December the 14th, the year 2000, I climbed this mountain. I leaned my head and cradled it in my arms against the stones up there. And you're going to want to go up there either this evening or in the morning and see the stone tower that's up there. But I cradled my head in my arms and leaned against that tower and wept for about 10 minutes, knowing that I had accomplished my hike of the Appalachian Mountain Range. And I whispered or said to myself at the time that someday I'm going to come back here. I don't know when or for what reason. Well, Alex, I've been back here 3 years now as caretaker of this mountain, and it's just such a blessing. I wanted to do a lot of hiking for many years. I'm an outdoors person. I'm Huck Finn. I was raised up in the Ozarks up in Missouri. And as a child, I was able to roam the woods and the streams and be outdoors. And I was captivated by that lifestyle, and life got in the way, as quite often it does for all of us. But in the year 1998, I had the opportunity to put on a backpack because I was retired then, and that I was age 59 at the time, was able to put a backpack on, and I went down to the southernmost extent of the Florida Trail in Florida, and I started north. And during that hike of the Florida National Scenic Trail, I decided I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. So I heard about some trails that were in Alabama, so I just decided, well, I'm just going to keep on going. When I finish the Florida Trail, I'm just going to keep hiking. So that year, I not only hiked the Florida Trail, which is a National Scenic Trail, but I also hiked the Appalachian, or I like to refer to it as the Appalachian Trail. So in '98, I hiked what has become known now as the Eastern Continental Trail. At that time, it began at Key West, Florida, and ended at a place called Land's End, which is at the tip of the peninsula up there, where the St. Lawrence Sea, where the St. Lawrence River meets the sea at Cap Gaspé. So that was a 4,400-mile journey in the year 1998, and I enjoyed that so much that I returned in the year 2000 and did a southbound hike, which included a through hike of the Appalachian Trail and the Florida Trail again. And I returned then that year, next year, to Newfoundland to hike the long-range Appalachian Mountains. No one had hiked any of that up there at the time, but there was some trail and a lot of road walking and some incredible mountainous exposure and scenery that I had never even dreamt of seeing that I was able to take in. So that was kind of the way I cut my teeth to get started with it, and then it just so happens over the next 6 or 7 years that I had hiked enough of the National Scenic Trails, unbeknownst to me at the time, but I finally realized that I was within 3 or 4 trails of completing all 11 of the National Scenic Trails. So then I just set my mind on going ahead and completing them. I'd already completed the Triple Crown by that point, and they had added, in the 90s, they added the 3 additional trails to the 8 original. They added the Arizona Trail, the New England Trail, and then the Pacific Northwest Trail that we talked about. So I had those trails to knock out. So in 2012, 2013, I completed the last of the 11 National Scenic Trails. So I've hiked all 11 of the National Scenic Trails. And I'd become friends then, and the photographer we talked about again a while ago, Bart Smith, who has done a lot of work and brought a lot of attention to a number of different trails, not the least of which the Appalachian Trail. He did a coffee table book that Earl Schaefer narrated at the time, calling me back to the hills. And I got to be friends with Bart. And Bart had hiked he had completed all 11 of the National Scenic Trails also. So he was starting to work on the National Historic Trails. And he had hiked the Oregon Trail, and I had also hiked the Oregon Trail. So we got together and decided that we have the same segments of a number of other trails if we're going to hike the remaining major trails of westward expansion. Those are your pioneer trails. There's 6 of those. So we got together, and after we had hiked the Oregon Trail, we hiked quite a bit of the California Trail together. The Mormon Pioneer Trail we hiked together. And then the last one we spent quite a bit of time together on was the Pony Express Trail. So I've hiked all 11 National Scenic Trails and the 6 major trails of westward expansion, the Pioneer Trails. They would be the Lewis and Clark, which I've hiked it twice, about a distance of some 5,000 miles. The Santa Fe Trail is one of those. And then, of course, the most famous one, I guess, would be the California Trail. That would be your Gold Rush Trail. The Oregon Trail is one of them. Mormon Pioneer Trail is one of the national historic trails that are one of the trails of westward expansion. And then the final one that I mentioned to you a while ago, the Pony Express Trail. So I've hiked all 6 of those. I've done 2 transcontinental hikes. I've pieced hikes together. I guess you'd call it section hiking, that you piece together. I've hiked the circumference of the lower 48. That's a distance of about 19,000 miles. That would be all 4 corners and all 4 sides of the lower 48. And you add all that together, it's about 19,000 miles. I've hiked, and pieces again, Andy Skirka. You've heard of Andy Skirka. Andy did the Great Western Loop. That was a hike that he did as a through hike that connected the Continental Divide Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail by hiking different segments on the southern extreme and the northern extreme. Well, I got to looking at the hikes I'd accomplished over time and was able to piece together the Great Western Loop, but mine was a section completion of that where Andy hiked it straight through. Another trail that runs for about 11,000 miles, Andy hiked that as a through hike. The Sea to Sea, have you heard of that trail? The Sea to Sea Trail starts up at the Canadian border, comes down and picks up part of the Appalachian Trail, goes over and joins in with the North Country Trail, and then connects to some extent with the Lewis and Clark, and then the Pacific Northwest Trail, about 11,000 miles. I don't think anyone else has through hiked it except Andy, but I've hiked it again, piecing together my Lewis and Clark and my Pacific Northwest and my North Country and the Appalachian Trail and some of the Eastern Continental Trail, hooking all that together. For all practical purposes, I've hiked the Sea to Sea Trail, 11,000 miles of that or whatever it adds up to. I've done a bunch of other shorter hikes, I guess, off and on. I've done what I labeled the Triple O. The Triple O would be your Ozark Trail, the Ozark Highland Trail, and the Ouachita Trail. I did that as a through hike with about 200-300 miles of road walking to hook them all together in 2011. And that trail adds up to about 1,100 miles, and a bunch of other goofy odds and ends stuff in between. But I guess what I'm most proud of is having completed all 11 of the National Scenic Trails. 3 years ago, I got a wild idea that I wanted to, when I was a youngster, got my first vehicle, was a 1953 Ford. I drove quite a bit of old Route 66, and the nostalgia of that and just looking back and the memories of that, I decided, well, I'll just go walk that puppy. So 3 years ago, I went to the Loop in downtown Chicago, and I put my backpack on, and I walked the tarmac and the concrete for 2,300 miles to the Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles, 121 days. But that's the last hike I did. That crazy road walk was the last one I've done. That kind of sums it up, I guess.
That's a lot of road walking. Wow.
I don't know what's your attitude about it. Most people, I call you, well, you don't fit into that. But most of the people that have had any miles under their belt and have done any extended hikes have done it on trails that I call the Green Tunnel. And I call those folks, and not disrespectfully saying it, but I just call them the Green Tunnel crowd. And you're not going to take your scout troop. Being a scout leader, you're not going to take your 20 scouts and take them out here and walk the road from here to Montgomery or someplace. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do a road walk. You're going to go into the Green Tunnel somewhere. But there's those of us that have ventured down from the trail up on the ridge into the little villages and the roads that connect the little villages along, and have immersed ourselves in the history of those communities and got to know those people and all their dogs that come out to greet you when you're walking through. Road walking's another whole total lifestyle. It's another whole total experience, from backpacking on a trail that's in the Green Tunnel or in the woods or in the desert or wherever you may happen to go to seek that solitude that's out there on the trail. Road walking isn't that. It's a whole different experience. So those of us who just kind of stumble down off of the green, out of the Green Tunnel and end up on the roads, let's take 100 of those people, which would be quite a few that would do that, that you'll have one out of that 100 that really finds pleasure in the road walking. And then you take 100 of those, which you can't find because there aren't. You might find 15 or 20 of us. Alex, maybe not that even, maybe 10 of us that find really great pleasure and joy in road walking. You got to get your head on differently to be able to appreciate what I'm trying to convey to you. What's involved in road walking. You've been out there, you've been on the tarmac, you've been on the concrete, you've had the traffic whizzing by, you've had to deal with all of that. Probably not a pleasant experience.
Well, I actually began to appreciate road walking on the Hayduke Trail because the off-trail, off-road stuff was so brutally hard that it was just like a nice relief to be on the road.
So it's a different experience.
Yeah.
And you get to meet folks will stop and, are you okay? Here, have a Gatorade or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they'll go to the next town and 20 minutes later, here they come with a pack from food, a bag from McDonald's or something for you.
Yeah.
Or I live up the road here about 4 miles. Where are you heading tonight? Well, why don't you come and stay at my place? This sort of thing is very common. those occurrences, whether you experience any of those or not. But if you're out there long enough on the roads and you enjoy that sort of interaction with people, I just take great pleasure in that. And get to know the communities and the different places and the people that habitate those places. It's just, I love it. I just really enjoy it. So that's part of the road walking. And then you got the heat and the traffic and the semi trucks blowing you off the road, and you deal with all that. But it's the same on any hike. The happiness that you have or enjoy or you seek or you learn to kind of appreciate, Sam Clemens said this. He said, happiness is not a thing in itself. It's just in comparison to something that's not near as pleasant. So if you're going to appreciate something that you label as happiness, it has to be bracketed and it has to be bounced off of other things that would create meaning for that. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. So if you're out on a cold, rainy day and your back's sore and you got blisters on your feet and you keep insisting and constantly shouting to yourself in your brain, you dumbass, what are you doing out here? Okay. It's those kind of days that stir in with the beauty and the joy of the sunshine and the vistas and all the other things that give you the happiness. But you can't appreciate that joy and that happiness, that part of what we would label happiness, if you don't have something to bounce it off of. You got to be able, and that's what Mark Twain meant. He said, you got to have this over here before you're going to understand or appreciate this over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like happiness is relative.
Absolutely. And I think I've got a good, I've glommed onto a hell of a big chunk of it, okay?
Yeah, lots of experience.
So the wind and the sun and the heat and the blistering bubbles in the tarmac going down the road and the semi trucks, and the end of that ribbon you can see is 7 miles away, and you don't think you're ever going to get there. All those negative emotional experiences that you just as soon deal without stir into the mix. That's the seasoning that makes the sauce that creates the gruel or the mix of whatever you want to call it tasteful, where that taste is there and it means something. That's the happiness of it.
Yeah, it makes it interesting.
And so if I've had experiences where I've suffered to a greater extent than you, and then I'm in a situation where I find that I'm having a really good time, my definition of what that is as far as happiness is going to be greater than yours. I don't mean, again, to be demeaning to you, but if all you've had was coddled all your whole life, which we know folks have been coddled their whole life, how are they going to understand what happiness is if they haven't had the trials and the tribulations on the other end of it?
Yeah, you would need a whole lot more.
Yeah, we're beating this to death, but I think we got a pretty much mutual understanding of what that involves. Yeah, yeah.
Have you kept track of your miles that you've hiked?
You disappoint me. Normally, you disappoint me. Normally, that's the first question everybody asks.
No.
And yours is down there, third or fourth question.
I just have to get that one out of the way.
Again, that's fine. I have no idea. That's not what this is about. To put that in perspective, now, if you're familiar with some of the folks that have hiked the Appalachian Trail and have become well known, and you've heard of a gentleman by the name of Billy Goat. And Billy Goat this last year, and he's documented his miles that he's accomplished and he's covered in his lifetime, has kept track of that, and he just broke 50,000 miles this last year. And that's an incredible accomplishment. But on the other end of that, I have a friend up in Missouri, and we just coincidentally became good friends. Nothing to do with our experience as far as walking, but we're just friends. Spend time at the bar and shoot some pool and go out to dinner once in a while. And one evening we were talking. He's retired from the post office, and he had a postal route that he walked with his satchel on his shoulder for 25 years. And I said, Sonny, his name is Sonny, one of the things we had in common. I said, Sonny, have you ever figured it out? I said, do you ever sit down and figure out how many miles you've actually walked carrying that darn mail satchel? And he said, no, I never did. I said, well, let's do it. Let's figure it up. We can do it. So during the course of the next hour or so, I said, well, how many years did you bang that thing out? He figured that out. I said, well, how many miles a day or how far did you cover each day with your route? And he figured up an average of what that was over the 25 years. Well, how many days vacation did you have, and how many days sick leave and all that, and how many actual days during each of those 25 years were you actually on that route? We figured that all out. Just some of it estimates, but pretty accurate estimates, okay? So we added all this up. He had walked well over 50,000 miles with a dang mail pouch on and never thought a dang thing about it. So there's the other end of it, okay? Here's a guy that set out to hike 50,000 miles in his lifetime, and that was one of his major goals that he wanted to do. And here's another guy over here that walked 50,000 miles and didn't even damn know it. So I have no idea how far I've hiked. It's a fair distance.
Yeah, we could just say a lot.
A fair distance, yeah.
Yeah. You kind of went over this earlier. You said you didn't really get into hiking until, what, 58? Late 50s?
I completed the first book, 10 Million Steps. Yeah, this book here. The hike that gave me the inspiration to write this book, 10 Million Steps, I completed that hike the day I turned 60. So I can't say I've done all my hiking since I was 60, but I was 59 when I started this hike, and I turned 60 when I completed that in the year 1998. So since then, and up through 2017, which was my last long hike, that's a time frame that's involved in it. And so I did my last hike, my last long hike at age 79, was 79 when I completed that hike. Okay. So from age 59, 60, thereabouts, say 60, from age 60 to age 79, I've hiked tens of thousands of miles.
Was there an event in your life that kind of spurred that? Or was it just retiring? Like, what I'm interested in is, have you been interested in this kind of stuff your whole life? Or was it something that you kind of found later on?
Well, we're gonna get in the weeds here now, okay? Because you said you were going to talk about this, and I guess we're going to start talking about it. Yeah, we've all got baggage, and the older you get, the bigger your baggage is. And I had a bunch of baggage, things that I wasn't necessarily proud of, situations and occurrences and events in my life that I would have changed. make sense to you? Maybe you understand that a little bit? Because we all have, we're.
That spurs a lot of people out on the trail.
Look, I'm gonna tell you something, and I don't mean this nasty. You're a jerk. But you ain't near as big a jerk as I am, because I've lived a lot longer, so I'm a bigger jerk than you are. And again, don't be angry at me for telling you that. But we have these situations and occurrences and times in our life, the way we treated our friends or the way we treated our loved ones or the way we treated our family or one of our dearest family members that we love, how we might have shot our mouth off to them or said something that we should never have said. But once it's said, you can't take it back. But then you regret that the rest of your life. That goes in that bag. That's part of that baggage. And I think part of the aging process, and you're just approaching that. You're just starting to get into what happens as you get older. We become more sensitive. We become more, we question more who we are and what we are. What's this about? Why am I here? And why have I been such a jerk in my life? So you got that baggage. I told you we were going to get in the weeds on this, okay? You've got that baggage that you're carrying, and you say, well, I can handle this. I'm a strong person. I can deal with this. I have ways within my own capacity, my own abilities, my own reasoning, my own thoughts, my own emotions, my own moral fiber. I have within me the ability to deal with this myself. I don't need any help. I can handle this. But then tomorrow comes, and next week comes, and another month goes by, and a year or two goes by, and you're getting older, and that hasn't gone away, and you haven't dealt with it. And this baggage, this burden that you're lugging and you're carrying along, eventually gets to a point where it's impossible to pick up and carry and to lug. Mentally, physically, emotionally, you can't deal with it. So what do? You say, well, let's look at this a different way, old man. How about you seek some help? And I'm not talking about help that's going to come through someone's education, that they graduated from this school of psychology or anything like that. Not that sort of help. Because some of us have already sought that and have found out that that might help, but probably we're right back where we were to start with the next year later. And your own personal life, I have no idea if or when or you had to deal with any of that, but I did. And I received no satisfaction, no closure in the suffering I was going through mentally and emotionally. So I thought, well, let's just put a pack on and let's go out with nature. Let's seek and immerse ourselves in another medium that's out there that we know is out there, because we've heard and we've been taught, and we probably have an instinctive feeling down deep that nature and God have something in combination that we may, not with our senses, our physical senses of seeing or feeling or smelling or hearing or tasting, but within our heart and in our mind, we know that there's some connection there between nature and what we would call God. So I sought that out, and I went out there. And I liked it. And you speak about this, and I think you're into this mind, soul, and how did you classify?
Mind, body, and soul.
Mind, body, and soul. That triad. And the way I've looked at it and the way I classified it is very similar. There's three levels that we exist on in our life, our physical life. There's three levels. One is maybe not a little more ephemeral and maybe not as physical, but it's there because we can accept it and go for it and be part of it if we want to. But the three planes that and this is what we do when we hike. We immerse ourselves in at least two of these planes in a very, very concentrated way. The first plane is the physical plane. If you're going to put a pack on your back that weighs 20, 30 plus pounds, and you're going to try to walk through the mountains and valleys of 14 states on a trail that we call the Appalachian Trail, you're going to probably figure that this is an incredible challenge. This is the physical challenge. And if you can accomplish that or achieve that, then you've really done something big. So that's one of the two main planes that we have to deal with in life, and concentrate when we're on the trail, because to go to work, we just walk to our car. And to go to lunch, we just walk to the cafe. And at home, we just walk to get to the toilet. But we don't walk 15, 20, 30 miles a day like we do on the trail. So the physical challenge, that plane, that one of the three planes I'm going to talk to you about, is the one that we think is the most difficult to overcome. The second of the planes is the mental. So we've got the physical and the mental now that we have to deal with. I don't know if there's been any actual, really honest-to-gosh studies done about this, but the failure rate, especially on the Appalachian Trail, used to be enormous. I don't think it's quite as bad now as it was, but the failure rate on the AT used to be in around 80%. So you're telling your friends, I'm going to go hike the Appalachian Trail, and your friends tell you, you probably ain't going to make it, because 8 out of 10 of the people that take a crack at that thing never ever make it. And that's pretty much the extent of what we delve in exploring what that is. We just know that 8 out of 10 people, and it's still real high, maybe 60 or 70% even to this day, even with the good gear we have and the training and the knowledge and the resources that are out there that we can avail ourselves to improve our chances of success. I think the failure rate's still probably somewhere near 60 or 70%. But I don't think beyond that, what has really been studied and delved into is why. What happened to you? How come you quit? Why didn't you finish the trail? Surprisingly, and I would have you confront me on this and say I don't believe that, but I'm firmly convinced from the people I've talked to, and this ain't scientific, it's just my own personal experience in talking with folks that have failed in their attempt on a long distance hike. There's another 80-20 there, just like in the failure rate on the AT of the 10 that take out, there's 8 of them never make it. I think that 8 out of 10 of the people that actually fail or quit the trail give it up not because of the physical challenge. They give it up because of their failure to overcome and to master the mental challenge. Here's what happens. As you put a pack on, you're dealing with that grueling day-to-day grind, but with time, you overcome that, so the physical demands that you're dealing with become less. However, you're having to deal also with the mental demands of being out there. You're alone, you haven't seen your family, You've been called selfish because you're doing this. You should be back at work. You should be taking care of your family. You should, whatever your other responsibilities that other people tell you you should be involved in, you're very selfish to go out and to just take all this time to yourself. You shouldn't be doing that. So you got all these things working on you mentally. That problem increases with time. And your ability to deal with it and overcome what the mental challenges are in a hike become bigger and not smaller. In real life, we deal with that by we immerse ourselves in a way in society where all the confusion, all the noise, all the racket, all the peripheral things that we deal with from day to day keep us from thinking about who we are as a person. And this gets back to you being a jerk, okay? And it gets back to me being a jerk. And when you're out there for hours and days and weeks and months, you don't have the distractions that you can go to that'll take your mind off of that. You jump in your car and you go downtown, you pick up the phone, you call your friends, you turn on the TV because you don't want to think about how you treated your mother when you were a child, how you were nasty with your really good people that were your friends and considered you to be a friend, how you dealt with them sometimes and the really nasty person that you are that made you into the jerk that you are. You can't escape those moments and hours and days on the trail. So it's in your head, it's in your mind, and after a while you say, I can't handle this anymore. So what do? You quit. But you didn't quit because you had blisters on your feet. You didn't quit because your back was hurting. You didn't quit because your pack was so heavy and you didn't want to carry it anymore. You quit because you couldn't deal with the mental challenges that are part of and increase day to day when you're hiking. The third plane, and this is your third plane, is the spiritual aspect of it. And that's coming right around 360 back to where I started discussing how we were going to go into the weeds on this. We know that there's a connection between God and nature. And you can dispute that, I guess, but to me it's unequivocal. You can't go out here and see this sunset, which is beautiful again tonight. You can't go out here and see God's great, all the beautiful things He's created or she's created, whoever God is, that we experience when we're with nature and not realize there's a connection there. So to be a successful long-distance hiker or to be successful in life, comparatively, okay, you have to succeed on the physical. You've got to take care of yourself. You have to be healthy or you can't do the things you want to do. And you have to manage or at least feel like you're managing the mental challenges from day to day. And those of us that are able to do that, and we consider ourselves successful long-distance hikers because we've overcome the physical and the mental challenges of it, opens up this third realm if we want to delve into it. And it's been there all along. We see it every moment, every hour, every day, every week. We're on the trail, we see the connection that's there that we know deep down in our heart exists between nature and God. And if we want to open ourselves up to that, it's there for us to do. We've got down off of that pedestal that we've elevated ourselves to as being such a great person because we know we're not a great person. And we've learned to overcome the frailties and the failures that we've had in life, or we wouldn't have been successful on the trail. We'd have quit. So if we can, at some point and decide in our life that we want to do this, then we can join in that journey with God. And that's what's out there. So you got the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And to make a hike complete and a journey complete and a lifetime complete, we have to be successful in all three of those.
Yeah, I think you're spot on.
Is this what you're getting at with what you're doing?
Yeah, that's exactly
That nails it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Graybeard basically has the same philosophy, and he came up with it on his own. Like, it was kind of his idea before I even approached him about this project. He has a physical, mental, and spiritual.
Those are the three.
System too.
Those are the three planes that we function on.
Mm-hmm.
And day to day, they're not near as intense as we subject ourselves to on the trail. Mm-hmm. And as in life, we can either succeed or fail. And I think I've been a success at it. And it's brought me to a point where I think I can impart and understand a little bit of what wisdom is. Because with that comes humility, which has to be part of what your life is. And I'm comfortable and completely at ease now with who I am as a person. I've asked for and been forgiven for being a jerk because I couldn't handle that myself. I can't forgive myself for all the things I did that were wrong. My friends can forgive me and my family can forgive me, but I couldn't forgive myself. And so I searched out the realm and the source that I needed to deal with my failures. And I've been forgiven of those failures now. So with that, I believe has come some degree of wisdom. And in a humble way, if I can impart any of that to you today and those listening and paying attention to what we're doing here today, if that accomplishes anything, then it's a great time spent.
That's why I'm here. I want to go back to mental baggage a little bit. I think in the Hey Dude movie, I said something about that, how like hiking and carrying a backpack, that's hard enough. If you start having a whole bunch of mental baggage building up, then hiking becomes nearly impossible. It's like too heavy, it just weighs you down. But because I carried some of that onto my first thru hike. I had some stuff that I was dealing with and some things that I had done wrong and some things that I was very unsure about in life. So I was kind of searching for some of those answers. And I was pretty hard on myself out on the trail, but somewhere along the way I started to learn how to deal with it and to like really dive into these problems and not run away from them and really kind of like analyze them and kind of pick them apart and figure out like why I acted the way I did and stuff like that. So like, what is it about being in nature that makes it kind of conducive to being able to figure out that baggage? Because it's harder to do it in regular life, I think.
Indeed. Well, excuse me. You heard of a guy by the name of Benton MacKaye? I say that jokingly. We all know who Benton MacKaye is. Benton MacKaye is the founder of the Appalachian Trail. One of the most famous things, at least in my opinion, of what Benton said was, we need to stop and really look and see what we truly see. And if you can stop and look and see what you truly see, as Benton said, and I didn't understand that, but now I understand it. I don't know who said this, but it's a fairly famous saying that God hides things by putting them right in front of us or all around us. He hides all these things so we can't see them because they're right there in front of us. And nature's that way. If we can truly open our eyes and our minds and our hearts to see what we see, then we'll understand maybe the best that we as humans can understand what the relation is between God and nature. And don't you find that the concentrate that's there, the depth that's there, and the opportunity to immerse yourself in that is there once you open up your heart and your mind to it. And that's an evolving process. You suffer the physical pains and misgivings initially on the trail. And when you overcome them, you really get into suffering the mental shortcomings and failures and challenges that you have not only on the trail, but that you've left as a clutter behind you in your life. And when you're out there by yourself and you can't break that thought pattern, you can't find all those distractions to take you away from the unpleasantness of these thoughts that you have, then you can open yourself up to see what you see in nature. And I can observe God in nature now, and not in a braggadocio way, but I can see God in nature probably as well as anyone can. Because I've been there and I've dealt with it and I've paid my dues, so to speak, if you want to look at it from a mental and a purely lifestyle sort of a manifestation of who I am and what I am. I paid my dues as far as being able to see what I see in nature now. And you're experiencing this. You're much younger than I am. It took me 60 years to start to figure this out. That was my first long hike. And I've immersed myself in that ever since, to my good fortune and to my longevity. I'm here probably because the fact that I've lived a physical life, a very physical life, the last 20 years that I've been here.
Yeah, I've started to become more and more aware of all the distractions in my life. And it's a thing that is just increasing so rapidly in our society. And I think that's kind of a cause of a lot of the problems that we're seeing with a lot of anxiety and depression and stuff like that, because nobody has time to deal with their baggage anymore, or they don't make time for it.
Are you familiar with an author? Have you read any of Sigurd Olson's stuff? Sigurd Olson.
No.
Okay, well, I'd encourage you. I'd encourage you to go and look at some of Sigurd Olson's works. And he's said a number of very interesting and thought-provoking things in his writings. And one of the things that really struck me, he said one of the greatest losses in our life now and in our lifestyle and in our existence is just the pure loss of silence.
That kind of sums it up right there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So why is silence good?
Why is it good? Yeah. We know why the noise and the racket and the confusion and all that clutter is not good. So here again, you can bounce off of that, which is the opposite, is silence. And with that comes, I think, a certain depth of understanding of reverence. Is reverence a good word for that? If we can find in nature reverence, again, that's another collective way maybe, or a connective way of realizing that in nature is God. But silence, the earth revolves around the sun in silence. The leaves branch out on the tree in silence. All the great things that we can experience over time in nature pretty much occur and exist in silence, but not our lives, and not our way, and not how we exist day to day. The last thing in our life anymore is silence. So Sigurd Olson said that one of the greatest losses and one of the saddest things that have occurred in life, and certainly more recently and compounded and manifested now, is just the loss of silence.
Do you think people are aware of that?
Yes, they are. You know why they're aware of it? Because occasionally, very seldom, but occasionally, we place ourselves in an environment where there is silence. And you know what our reaction is to that? It's one of utter sheer fear. Yeah, it's just one of utter sheer fear to be exposed to silence because we are totally unfamiliar with it. And when we go out in nature and when we're out there, except for that occasional jet at 30,000 feet that's going over, and immerse ourselves in nature, then we expose ourselves and become more familiar and more at ease and more comfortable with silence. Because that's one of the things that, I don't know, I had trouble dealing with it to start with, and not realizing what it was that I was so uncomfortable about, and being out on the trail by myself in silence. And yet that's what it was. And once I realized that, I was able to address it and over time deal with it, to the point now that if I have silence, it's a joy in my life. I don't have perfect silence up here on this mountain, but I probably come as close as what you're going to find around anywhere that you've been exposed to over the last few days or weeks or so, that you'd say this is pretty close to what I would want to consider an environment of silence. It's not here, but it's pretty darn close to it, and I just relish and I immerse myself in it, and I can deal with that because I've been forgiven on the jerk that I am and the way I've lived my life. I don't have to fret over that and fuss over it anymore. And it's not a cop-out. This is a decision you have to make. This is a decision you have to make yourself in your own mind and in your heart, that if you're going to be happy, you're going to be comfortable, and you're going to have a fulfilling life, you're going to have some help. And that help comes from the spiritual realm. It has nothing to do with the smart guy you are mentally or the strong person you are physically. It has nothing to do with either of those two things. It's that third plane, the spiritual aspect of living. And there's a lot of that has to do with silence.
Okay. So what you described earlier, that you have to kind of have your physical realm and your mental realm kind of in check, like you need to understand those things and be good at them, and then you can kind of ascend to the spiritual realm. I think in my life I'm nearing that threshold. I still have a lot to learn, obviously, but I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to get really curious about the spiritual realm. And I think I'm starting to understand what it is and starting to kind of explore it. So why do you need the mental and the physical before you can ascend to the spiritual?
It's a journey. And I don't think it's a journey that is measured in terms of age or in years. I think you're well into that journey now from what I've come to understand about you the short time I've known you. But it took me 60 years to start figuring that out. There were 3 travelers In biblical times, we know them as the three wise men. And if you recall, they were on a journey. So there's that triad again. And I try to make that relationship or that association between the three wise men and their journey and the journey we're on, the physical, the mental, and then the spiritual. And if you recall, at the end of their journey, that was successful, a very successful journey. But again, they had to make that journey to get there. And again, we want to look at things from a physical or a mental standpoint. These are the things we understand, and we can wrap our head around it and make some sense of it. But the physical and the mental doesn't cut it. It just doesn't cut it. So if we can go back to the three wise men and the journey that they were on and the success they had with it, we can experience what is there for us on the spiritual realm of things if we haven't dealt with the physical and the mental challenges that are in our life. And again, as I mentioned a while ago, it's concentrated. It's here's the whole thing mixed up, and there's a gallon of it. And here's the concentrate over here, there's a gallon of that, and you can make 500 gallons of this stuff, okay, out of this gallon of concentrate. And I think that's what we have to learn to deal with as far as the mental and the physical aspect of it is. Once we've gone there in our life physically and mentally, and come in. What's that?
That's a squirrel.
That's a dang squirrel up in the attic.
Yeah.
They just make a heck of a racket.
Yeah.
You're going to have to edit that out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Jeez. I don't know. I think we beat that down pretty good.
Yeah.
You see why this was better just ad-libbing and off the cuff?
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to answer this stuff? How are you going to ask the questions?
This is the end of part 1. We kept going for another hour, though. Part 2 is next. Don't miss it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe.